Beginning with her name, Caligo means several things: darkness, gloom, dizziness. It's primarily used to refer to fog or obscurity of vision. It is also the name of a genus of butterfly with owl-like patterns on its wings. Her title is Miasma, a miasma being akin to fog, though more appropriately used to describe a noxious/poisonous vapor. Maybe it's considered a miasma because of her association with night. Other than that, her fog is more like a very chilly breeze. She can use her power over the chilly mist to obscure our vision, buy her time to create a giant crumbling snowflake overhead, or conjure enough frost to cast it out in waves. She isn't necessarily dark, but she's a Night Lord, an agent of the darkness that begets the death of all living things. The night's tide brings death, destroying Revenant's family by sicing the family's own servants against them. One thing I'd like to note is that, of course, Caligo breathes out and uses frost, I assume mechanically working the same as Borealis' mist, dealing magic and frostbite. Otherwise, magic and frostbite are dealt by ghost flame and dark moon spells plus ice spells. Magic is spiritual energy, communicated by where it comes from. Dwelling arrows gain power from spirits. Glintstone is residual life energy. Ghost flame is spirit flame. So I wonder what ice dragon breath is. Perhaps ice is a form of glintstone? It's made of water, which I guess you could call life energy. Water is often associated with sorcery in this franchise, seen by spell names such as Crystal Hail and Soul Stream. Otherwise, it's correlated with the moon, as the moon pulls on the seas. It is most prominent during the night, which is often cold, the dark moon being powered up by frostbite. The mountain tops were, and are now cold due to the absence of the fire giants. Once upon a time, astrologers lived on the mountains, icy powers probably being familiar to them due to altitude, though question is, did they only come up after the giants did? Because the fire giants likely warmed up the mountains, seen by the ghosts of fauna and foliage. These ghosts do cement the connection between death and cold. Speaking of, in the Dark Souls trilogy, cold, death, and dark are one-sided disparity, mostly correlated with the time before fire, which brought contrast into being. Ghost flame being cold and deathly, though not necessarily dark, though it does have black bits. Caligo is certainly an ice dragon of Elden Ring, though her appearance is reminiscent of Dark Souls' everlasting dragons. Her correlation with cold mist may harken back to the fog at the beginning of Dark Souls' world, perhaps becoming precipitation once fire warmed the world up, becoming the seas, lakes, and rivers that allow for conditions for life to grow, or at least that's my explanation. I have a theory now that perhaps the twin bird is the night's envoy. That would make sense to me given the connection between the night and death. If you believe that Nightreign is canon, that is... Caligo's connection to magic is emphasized by her ability to raise those ice pillars I mentioned. I know they'll protect us, but why? My guess is that she displaces the cold to better harness it. If I remember correctly, the cold during that attack comes to her from 3 directions, likely the same as the pillars, as well as her rain of hail she uses while flying, collected by her flight as mist and fired out of stones, reminiscent of Estelle's meteorite storm. Her snowflake is the most stunning, coalescing before falling as branches. Tree imagery is connected to everything in this series, even the cold and the night, as seen in Ashes of Ariandel and this game respectively. To backtrack to my Fulgur post a bit, and then return Caligo afterwards. Another hypothesis on who Fulgur's gods are, they could be related to horn-sent deities, specifically those of the heavens. The divine beast Dancing Lion wields powers of the storm of the heavens, which includes lightning. Fulgur's appearance gives him connotations with the Crucible, his centaur dom. So perhaps he is of a related culture. He is likely foreign to the land between, but still related culturally. Tangent. I've seen people chalk up Fulgur's symbol to Miquella's footprints. They're strikingly similar, but look to be accommodating a different ring. Perhaps Morgott's or Marika's? Perhaps an entirely different symbol? Let's entertain the idea that it is Miquella's. If this is true, it might correlate with my horn-sent deity idea, as Miquella effectively links up with a horn-sent and becomes God. So perhaps he had contact with their gods or the greater will. Perhaps in this timeline, while there is no tarnished, Miquella works something out. Relating to weather powers, Caligo wields frost, but no lightning. Lightning is the element associated with ancient dragons, symbolic of the gold within them and their mandate as rulers of the ancient world. Yet Caligo lacks gold and is frozen. Perhaps she is an offshoot of ancient dragons who instead wielded the cold. Both branches would wield the wind through their wings. Perhaps Caligo is just a specific individual who turned towards frost, or was merely born with a connection to it. Cold is the opposite of warmth, and warmth, through her expedition description and Estus/bonfires in the Dark Souls trilogy, is synonymous with life. I originally expected her to wield ice lightning, but that seems mechanically different as it's wielded by Dragonkin soldiers, this form of lightning being made specifically for them. Otherwise, it is wielded by the sprites found around underground rivers, the bowers of consecrated snowfield, and the Cerulean coast, ancient places of the world. Perhaps ice lightning can be correlated with, well, a few things. Silver possibly, since lightning is otherwise conducted through gold. Silver is an element associated with the moon, hence why Rolana's armor has a silvery look, one of which being associated with frost. We do see silver tears surging with lightning, but not the icy kind. Also to note, silver is actually the most electrically conductive metal. Moon energy, given its frostiness. The moon is an aspect of the night, and the night is associated with death. Magic is spiritual/soul energy, given that it's dealt by ghost flame, and glintstone, which is residual life energy. The Nox who made the Dragonkin soldiers were worshippers of night, so I think it's fair to say they conjured the lightning via this. It could also be general deathly energy. Frost, death, and dark are opposites of warmth, life, and light, a dichotomy made in the Dark Souls trilogy. This could link up back to what I said about moons and the night just above. The sprites of ice lightning are found along the rivers of the underground, accompanied by ancestral followers who worship spirits. The bowers are akin to trees, possibly harboring souls like the shaman trees, plus the Erd tree. The coffins are full of death. It's possible the Dragonkin's lightning comes from the sacrifices of eternal cities. Either that, or it's the coldness of the underground, possibly even the false night sky, which may produce its own false frigid lightning. Caligo's cold does still fit, given she's an agent of the night, purloining warmth from her victims to kill them. She creates mist, thus her title as Miasma, a power akin to the manipulation of wind like the other ancient dragons, Placidusax even becoming a rumbling cloud. Another hypothesis on why Fulgur serves the night, as shown by Revenant's remembrance, makes people go mad and kill, possibly to serve up souls to the night, so that it may grow. Fulgur may be driven mad by the night to serve it, or may merely use the night as a vehicle for his battle lust. The night is similar to the abyss of Dark Souls and the moon in Bloodborne, in which they drive things mad to deal death and facilitate their own growth. According to her descriptions, Caligo is an ancient being lurking in fog, which is often affiliated with the cold as seen in the northwest corner of Courier Manor, said to appear at history's greatest junctures, that currently being the night. The night pulls time and space, even reaching the Dark Souls. Something of interest since Placidusax is able to manipulate time as the scales of his kin. The everlasting dragons of Dark Souls were timeless immortals and could navigate time through memory. She lived on a phantasmal peak, given the connotation that she lived on a conjured mountain in the skies, perhaps akin to the icicle scene in her second phase of Skybox. Speaking of, the main focus of her Skybox is the eye, perhaps making reference to how she looked down and perceived the world, the slit appearing like a rift, perhaps one she emerged from. Caligo is a student, seeking to understand the night and what it could bring to the table, perhaps using it for her own ends. Her curiosity and knowledge fits with her frost magic skill set, since such powers require intelligence, and are cosmic and divine ice sorcery and divine beast/weather power. In terms of stats, Caligo is weak to strike, and fire due to her connotation with ice. This doesn't match with Borealis, or, well, his lowest damage negation, at 10%, is strike. Caligo's strike negation is minus 10%. Borealis' standard slash and pierce negations are 35%, 80%, and another 80%, while Caligo's negations of those respective damage types are 0%, 15%, and 10%, so she's much squishier than her Drakekin. Before I talk about kinship, dragons have a uniform 40% elemental damage negation, ancient dragons having 80% for lightning. Caligo's elemental negations are uniformly 20% except fire, which is minus 35%. This ties Caligo to being more of an elemental creature, like the Zamor, who too are weak to fire with minus 20% fire negation. Also, Caligo does not have a typical ancient dragon name, despite her phenotype. Zac suffix is absent, and ancient dragon weakness. Caligo is probably kin to ice drakes. In fact, I know this is going to be long, so let me try and lay out some paths of inquiry I can take in regard to her kinship. Caligo is an ice dragon of the mountaintops. Due to Borealis' myths, I believed all ice dragons were drakes. It isn't out of the question that Caligo, and perhaps possible kin, could be among that number. The problem is timeline considerations, and if this description implies more about ice ancient dragons and drakes, which in my mind isn't likely given Borealis is the one this description belongs to. It's possible ice dragons existed in great quantities once upon a time. We don't know. Two, a consort of Bel. If ice drakes were the main inhabitants of the mountains, then that might say something about Bel. Caligo and others may have even mates to Bel. It's also possible drakes are just highly adaptable, seen in other drakes. A theme from Dark Souls is that the everlasting dragons, despite their nature, could not adapt to the future and perished, but their descendants were evolvers and outlasted the very gods who wiped out their ancestors, a theme now paralleled in Elden Ring to a less dramatic extent. Whatever the case, the ice dragons were pushed in the mountaintops by the fire giants, meaning that maybe giants and possibly the Rao civilization came after Bel's tyranny, if we are to believe the ice dragons included drakes. If you're wondering why I'm using a lot of maybes, it's because I honestly don't know, which is pretty much what I have to do with these entries regarding the Nightlords. Borealis' misdescription doesn't specify the form of these ice dragons, but due to Borealis' nature as a drake, it's safe to assume it refers to his kind. It's possible that Borealis merely came to the mountains after the fire giants went extinct and became an ice drake. But that's not a really satisfying story now, is it? If Borealis was a member of the ice dragons from a long time ago, maybe he is a reflection of the Dark Souls theme of dragons outlasting their oppressors. Also seen with the drakes outlasting Ferrum Azula, which now crumbles as they fly through the skies. This paragraph was a needless thought experiment. You know something else I just thought about? Lightning and frost are opposite states in terms of movement. Lightning is lightning fast, whilst frost is slowly creeping. Music or theme uses a piano, communicating her icy nature, sounding very serene, along with other instruments and vocals. When the song hits hard, it sounds to me like Her Majesty as she fans out her wings or flies across the sky. There's a bit of a tragic flair to her song as well, a lonely and solemn trill communicating her isolation upon her peak, watching the world unravel from far above with no kin to comfort her. Her second phase communicates Her Majesty as a great flying beast. Her theme makes me feel sorrow for her, but she serves the night. Whatever she learned upon her inspection, she used to become a Night Lord, using the night to her advantage and attempting to outlast the rest of the U.S., earning her scorn from the world and painting herself as an enemy of the Round Table Hold. I will not yet talk about her third phase music. We'll have to wait till her ever dark form. 2. Relic before talking about its color. I do believe she is using the night for her own gain, since the relic states she sought to see the fortunes and misfortunes brought about by the night. I would also like to note this relic's ability to conceal you when frostbite is dealt. Pretty cool. Also, it raises damage from frostbite being dealt, an ability also granted from the favor of the mountaintop, which is guarded by an ice drake. Also to note is that the crystals around the mountaintop are a deep blue, painting a connection to glintstone yet again. Caligo's relic is yellow. Yellow relics having a description that reminisces on cascading rays of light and majestic lengths of earth. Things I'd associate with Caligo, given the light from her skybox and her knowledge from her age being incredibly vast, having possibly seen many great lands and empires across her lifespan.